Can you please share with everyone your story from September 11th, 2001?
Sure. Let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Conaway, and I was in New York City on September 11th, 2001. I had traveled there for business. I was selling prepackaged fruit for a company, and I had flown from Texas, where my wife and I lived, to New York for a business gathering. And so we traveled in there on that Monday and arrived there, had a wonderful day. And then Tuesday morning, September 11th, I woke up to go down to buy a sport coat. One of the company's owners was actually having a wedding. His daughter was going to get married, and I hadn't brought a sport coat with me that I felt like was appropriate for the time. So I went downtown that morning. I got up. The other guys that stayed in were out really late, and so I headed down to Manhattan myself. While I was there, it was about 7:45, 8 o'clock, right around that time, when I got a phone call from my wife asking me where I was and telling me about some of the things that were happening on the television. She knew I was in New York, and so I said, I really don't know. I heard something about twin-engine plane landing on top of a building. I said, but I really didn't know anything, so I said, I'll go outside and see. And as I walked outside, I began to realize, wow, there's something happening here. And just around that time that first plane had hit, I saw billows of smoke, and people were just losing it around me. People were, the radios were on, people were running around. There was just a lot of chaos. And from what I could surmise as I began to walk toward the chaos, what happened is I heard people say that America was under attack. I heard people say that the Pentagon had been attacked. There were multiple attacks. We thought we were at war. And so as the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I'm here in New York and my wife is all the way in Texas. So I began to head toward the chaos to see what was going on. As I was traveling, I had a clear view of both of the Twin Towers as I was walking down the street. So I went into a shop, and there was a man who had grabbed the whole section of disposable cameras off and ran out to the front of his shop, and he was selling cameras. So I thought, well, I'm going to grab one of these. So he $10 right there exchanged, and I started taking pictures as I walked. So I would walk a few blocks, and then I would take a picture so I could kind of, record this for history. I didn't know what was really happening. I saw both of the towers smoking. And then as I was walking, a Japanese tourist actually asked me to take a picture of him. He didn't speak English, but so I took a picture of him, and then he just grabbed my camera, and I turned around and he took a picture of me, and behind me you can still see the two towers standing. So I got to a specific point, I want to say 6th Avenue, 6th Street, right around that area, and the police had barricaded everything off. And I was sitting there watching, and a company secretary had called me on the phone. She knew I was in New York. She was calling me from Texas, and she was highly concerned. And so I told her, no, I'm fine. I'm here right now. I'm watching and looking. And right at that moment, I said, oh my God. One of the towers literally exploded and fell to the ground right before my eyes. There was a young African-American businessman that was walking with a briefcase, and he saw this, and he threw his briefcase down, he threw his raincoat down, and he screamed no and started running toward the area. Obviously we were blocks away, so there was no dust or anything like that. The police stopped him. We all just kind of stood there, and we were taking pictures and just kind of seeing what was happening, and just a few seconds later, boom, the next tower fell, and our cell service was eliminated. We didn't even have cell phone service. Something really, really amazing happened at that time. I was standing with probably 400 or 500 people on this busy city block, and people just began to kneel, and they just began to pray. And they just kind of knelt right there and prayed, and it was just somber, and it was a quiet moment. Even in all the chaos and the busyness, it just seemed like everybody stopped for that moment and just kind of knelt down And we all just said a prayer, you know, for those who were in the towers, for those who were left behind. I got up, and the police weren't letting anybody go any further. So I just began to walk back to my hotel. The two guys I was there on business with were concerned because I had told them I was going downtown maybe to do some sightseeing. So they were concerned that maybe I had gotten hurt when I got back to the hotel. They were highly concerned. We talked for a few more minutes. Finally, we were able to get a hold of our families again to let them know, hey, everything's fine with us. That night we went out, September 11th, the evening. It was Times Square. And the night before, we were out there, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people out there. That night, there might have been 10 or 20 people in the whole square. It was like a ghost town. It was really, really eerie. You knew something had happened that was catastrophic. We couldn't find restaurants open. We couldn't find businesses open. No one knew if there were more attacks coming. We just knew that there was something happening, and we knew it was big. We finally found a little pizza shop. We ordered a pizza, and the three of us went back to the hotel and said, hey, listen, we need to get out of here. Our plane tickets are no good. LaGuardia wasn't going anywhere. No one was flying out of LaGuardia. So the next day, he and my two friends got together, and they rented a car because they both lived on the East Coast. Well, I lived in Texas, so we couldn't have the same car. And I had to pay a taxi driver two-way fare to take me to LaGuardia. And I picked up one of the very last rental cars from Budget Rental. I picked up that car there, and I sat on Manhattan Island for about 4 hours in traffic until finally I came out of Manhattan Island and started driving down the East Coast, drove right past the Pentagon, could see all that chaos, and drove home to Texas. It took me about 36 hours to get there. It's just a moment I'll never, ever forget. Just tragic, and I remember how concerned I was for my wife, who was all the way back in Texas by herself, and I thought, you know, I've got to get home. And that was that. So the next morning, Wednesday morning, you know, just before I went and took off, I picked up a couple of newspapers that were telling the story of what was happening. I stopped in a Walmart in Louisiana to get my film developed because I didn't want to miss something, and so I stopped right there in the Walmart, had them do their 1 hour turnaround, and then I was able to see some of the pictures of this event, and like I said, it marked my life forever. I'll never forget it. I think the thing that really stays with me the most is that somber, solemn moment where everybody on the street, didn't matter what religion, didn't matter what color, didn't matter gender, nothing mattered at that time. We all just knelt down and prayed because we knew something tragic had happened, and we knew that our country needed us. It was a very, very serious time. I'll never forget it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.